Um, we've got a lot of people on this call, as I said, and you can go to the, how do you do that again? You go to, you can see, what, Mike?
Participant.
Yeah, you go to participants and you can see the list of everyone who's here. So I'm not going to run through the entire list. The location managers and scouts received a spreadsheet of who had registered to be on this call. And the camera ready folks know who the locations people are, and I sent IMDb profiles, so you should have an idea. But I will introduce them since there's so few of us. But I will say that that on this call you have several of the camera ready liaisons from across the state. Some of them are veterans at this thing, and others are brand new to it. So we're going to approach this seminar in that way and ask some questions that are for folks that are brand new and others that have been here for a while. But we have several camera ready liaisons. We have the staff of the Georgia Film Office on this call. And we have 4 location veterans that I'm very excited to now introduce to you. And we're going to start with Mr. Mike Riley. And he probably saw in his profile, he has been with, he's been the location manager of The Walking Dead since the very beginning. And he was also at the film office at one time. So he comes from both of those perspectives. But he did manage several shows before The Walking Dead, including Sweet Home Alabama, The Odd Life of Timothy Green, and I'm sure his favorite, Dumb and Dumberer. Right, Mike?
Among the, one of the, yes, one of my favorites.
I'm just reading this right off IMDb. I have no judgment. And then we have Kyle Hinshaw. He's still here, right? There he is. And thanks again for joining with everything you got going on.
You got it.
And so Kyle is, you've probably seen his profile, but among his many projects, he was location manager of Bad Boys for Life and First Man, Darkest Minds, Baby Driver, many other projects. So he knows what he's talking about.
Tall order, Greg.
Yeah. Melanie Manning is on the call. She is primarily a location scout. Is that right, Melanie? You're still primarily doing that?
Yeah, I just specialize in location scouting, but I've done production since 1990, so I've got all the assets.
Right, right.
Worked with all the finest.
And produces a drink that I want to try when we all come out of our caves here. I was going to say you could plug that while you're on here, but anyway, so among her credits are, I mean, it's just long list: Avengers: Infinity War, Rampage, Jumanji: Welcome to the Jungle, American Made, Spider-Man: Homecoming, Ant-Man, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So
I've gotten around.
So she's gotten around. And then Lindsay Seeley's on the call. And she is a location scout, and she has worked on numerous projects, including Amazing Stories, Insatiable, Raising Dion, MacGyver, Star, Legacies, long list as well. So thank you, Lindsay, for participating. So I'm going to just start off with these questions. And like I said, these were all sent in through a survey I sent out to Camera Ready for the folks who had signed up. And these are kind of going in the order of the overlap between different lists of questions. I wanted to make sure I hit the ones that most everyone had, or a lot of the liaisons had. But if we could just kind of start at the beginning for everyone's benefit, and this is open to anyone who wants to participate, if the location managers and scouts could explain their role in this whole process, basically what you do, and when do you first engage with the film office or Camera Ready, and how can they help along the way? Anyone who wants to take it.
Well, the location managers are usually the very first people out on the show for the project, and we you know, depending on what our needs are from a location standpoint, we'll reach out to the Camera Ready people as early as possible. But we're the first hired and the last to be released from a project, generally. And so I reach out to camera-ready people in areas that I'm not familiar with, and I do that as soon as I find it necessary to do so.
What about the scouts? When do you tend to get involved in the process? Are you before the managers are hired, or after, or how does that play out?
Sometimes it is before the managers are even brought on. The producers will bring us on, and the producers have usually already reached out to the film commission, so they've already got some links, which is a good starting point for us. And then based off what they got from the film commission, I'll reach out to the individual county liaisons. So it's one of the very first things that I do in scouting.
And you're using our Real Scout database that the Camera Ready folks all have access to, and you also you kind of use that as a starting point, and then go out and shoot your own photos based on what the director needs, or the designer, or whoever.
Definitely, yeah. That's Georgia Film Commission site, Real Scout, and then my own photos, my own database. But yeah, I always start with the Film Commission site for sure. There's a lot of things that I don't even know existed until I get on the site, and so it's very helpful.
Each project has a different process. As a scout, sometimes, you know, I'm being called by a producer or hopefully a manager, and then sent, you know, what the logistics are. I always check with the film commission, because the database with the film commission is always changing, and I always want to know what's out there. Importantly, you know, trying to get in touch with certain camera ready folks in certain counties if they're trying to restrict a zone or keep it close to a studio. So a lot of research is done on the front end, and that's where all my local great camera ready folks are, because the local folks are really what's helpful, and who's out there, what we're looking for on specific projects. And I'm usually, you know, world building for a project, and being a scout, I typically go right up to right before they start filming, in hopes that they have all their locations set. But the film database, the Georgia Film Database, and any of the camera ready counties that have a database are very vital. Just to see what they have. There's by no way possible to have everything memorized is what's in Georgia and what's available. And people are always changing as far as roles and stuff. So it's always good just to touch base and see what's new and what's happening in the counties. So thank you.
Yeah, I don't have too much to add to this, but I will say that, like, usually my first step is to kind of quickly go through the script and pull out all the locations, and then I'll usually send that to Craig and Lee and let them send me a package if the producer hasn't already done that step, and that way we kind of have like a, you know, snapshot of, you know, what's available and on file, and it's a good jumping off point to kind of dig in deeper with the scouts, or you know, actually take the designer or the director, whoever I'm working with, you know, in the early stages, to go look at some stuff while my scouts are kind of getting their feet under them and you know, getting their own scouting underway. It's kind of a good stopgap.
And when you're actually in production, the location department does a lot more than just scouting locations or finding locations, or what else do you tend to do during production?
Well, we're responsible for all the logistics of moving the company around, whether that's hiring security or police, you know, permitting road closures, working with property owners to film at their location or park our crew, or, you know, set up a catering area. Sometimes that's a tent, sometimes it's actually going into a brick and mortar facility like a church, or, you know, God, we've catered in just about everything. As long as it's, you know, relatively clean, we can use it. And then crew parking, catering, base camp. So usually like big parking lots in the area, we're trying to lock those down. And any ancillary parking for generators or work trucks that need to be close to the set wherever we're working. That can get kind of tricky in neighborhoods where, you know, sometimes on-street parking is at a premium, or, you know, we're buying driveways from neighbors, that kind of thing. Any and everything we can to move the company around. So there's a lot to take in consideration.
And we negotiate a lot of the contracts. Most of the contracts we have to negotiate in all aspects of that. And we interface with the public sector a good bit, with various government agencies and whatnot. Everything from local small towns all the way up to the federal government. So it just depends on the project and what the needs are.
So probably the most popular question I got from the Camera Ready folks is, what are the most effective ways to get you guys aware of what is in their counties? And do you use any external sources other than Georgia Film Office and Real Scout to learn what the counties have to offer and what the various looks are in the counties? Do you think lookbooks or other printed materials are worth investing in? What else do you guys use that are not assets of the film office?
I'm not big on printed personally. Lookbooks, things like that haven't been super helpful. It really needs to be digital if possible.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the hard print stuff obviously is starting to go away because everybody is so connected with the internet. Good website is always good to have with a good cross section of what your area looks like and what it has to offer. But in addition to locations, we kind of need to know what you got for support. You know, how many hotel rooms do you have in the area? You know, what type of amenities you can offer as a community. Because the folks in this industry are all about being comfortable. So it's all about that. And that's why you see shows generally anchor themselves around a larger area, a larger city that's got a little more amenities to it. They might venture out. Say, for instance, if they wanted to shoot something down in Columbus or Savannah or wherever, in that area, they'll go there, base themselves there, probably stay within that area, and then go out to the various locations from there that they need. But that's really when you get out in the more rural areas where there's not a lot of that type of support, it's hard to base a company in a place that doesn't have the infrastructure to house these folks and feed them and, you know, give them something to do when they're not working, which is just basically over the weekends. So, but that's one of the things that you need to incorporate into that, because it's important to know, can we put a company there? You know, it's a great location, but how far is it from where we're going to want to base the company, set up the production offices, things of that nature. Stage space, it can be an old warehouse that they can retrofit and use it, you know. And how open is the local government to working with you? That's also another thing that's good to know about.
All right, I just got something here. Anybody else have something to say about that? Or
What was the question that led into what Mike was just talking about?
The question was how can these counties make you more aware of what they have to offer? And I think this is in between projects. It's not on a specific project, but like right now, I guess it's based on what we can do. What can they do to make you more aware? And I do get questions a lot about, like, for example, is it worth us putting an ad in the Oz source book or things like that?
I think the closer you can get to just reaching out to us directly, even by just emailing, is great. Just knowing, you know, if there's a particularly unique location that, you know, we should know about, that can sometimes drive the project where we're going. Like I just, before the pandemic started, I was on a big Netflix feature with The Rock and Ryan Reynolds, and we were looking for a underground cavern, tunnel that we could do a car chase in, and you know, that just really doesn't exist here. And I was able to, through the film office's files, I found like a snapshot on their website of an old abandoned mine that was owned by a mining operation called Emerus, and through that was able to get to one of their active mines. You know, through this process, I learned that, you know, going into like, you know, an old mine is actually more dangerous than being in an active one, because they have people working in the mines daily, and they're constantly doing mitigation to, you know, secure, like, they scale the sides of the tunnel and stuff. So, you know, just basically, God, I got so off track on this, but, you know, just, I was able, you know, through the website just to find something very unique, and that got us out of our, you know, 30-mile zone, you know, for the one time on the show, just because like we couldn't build that set in the zone. And all of our actors are like very adverse to traveling anywhere further than their, you know, anywhere further than a 30-minute commute. So well, it really took some doing to get us outside of, you know, the metro Atlanta area. But, you know, when it comes down to like, we can either not shoot this or we can go out of the zone and shoot it. Like, it's great to know what sort of resources that are kind of like you can't find here in Atlanta or, you know, the metro Atlanta area. Like those are great to have in our back pocket. And, you know, it's not every job that I need a mine tunnel, but, you know, it was great to know that it was out there. It's in Talking Rock that, you know, we ended up going to. So it's about an hour outside of Atlanta.
Well, that's a good transition to the next question, because it just so happens to be about the zone. I know our folks have heard that term used quite often. Some of them probably, or most of them may know kind of what that means, but can we narrow that down a little bit or get more specific about it, and have you all define what we mean by the zone, what it is, why it exists, and
sure.
And then what these communities that are outside the zone can do to, if a location that they have checks all the boxes except they're outside the zone, if there's anything they can do to kind of bridge the gap there.
Yeah, I mean, the 30-mile zone is it's part of the area standard agreements for multiple unions. Basically, if we're outside of a 30-mile radius from the state capitol here in Atlanta, then the producer has to pay housing and per diem and travel time on a daily basis if the crew is traveling to this, you know, outside the zone location. Usually what happens is due to, you know, actor turnarounds and various union negotiated turnarounds, they'll end up putting up the entire crew just for safety and not having everybody travel longer distances at the end of an already long workday. So it becomes really costly for the production to go outside of our TMZ, and you know, upwards of hundreds of thousands of dollars a day, because you're looking at a hotel room for everybody and per diem, and if not, they're definitely getting paid for the additional time of travel and then for the mileage. You know, sometimes if it's just outside the zone, the producer will opt to not necessarily put everybody up. They'll just provide like courtesy hotel rooms. But in order to kind of get us outside the zone on most projects, it has to be driven by the script. And like, if we can find it inside of Atlanta, and there's usually a big push to find it within the zone. And if we can't, then that's an additional cost that the production has to carry. And it's union negotiated and mandated, so there's not really a way around it for the producer. Thank God, because sometimes they would, put their crew at risk to save some money. I think the great thing that, especially not even that we have to deal with, but the production office and the travel coordinators, like just knowing, like Mike said, like what amenities in the local communities you have to house, 150 to 250 people, that becomes in itself a big logistical hurdle that they have to scale. And like in Talking Rock on Red Notice, we had crew in Jasper and Canton and all the way up to LJ. They were so spread out because Talking Rock is really couldn't accommodate the size of production we were. And, again, it was one of a kind location. We were going to make it work no matter what, but sometimes the difficulty of housing everybody kind of took the scales either way.
Well, like on our show though, our zone is from from our studio. So we're based down in Sonoy. So our zone is a 30-mile radius within Sonoy, which puts Atlanta, the majority of it, outside our zone. So it basically right about where Tyler Perry Studios are on the south side. That's the outer edge of our zone coming into Atlanta. So once we come into Atlanta, we get into the situation that Kyle was talking about, which is sort of odd. It's just a weird thing. We go let's say we come all the way downtown or a little bit north of there or anywhere outside the 30-mile radius. And that's as the crow flies now. It's not driving miles. You just draw a straight line 30 miles out, make a circle around your production office, and everything within that circle is your zone. If we went to Columbus, if we went to Macon, if we went to Valdosta, we went to Albany, wherever we based the company, that would be 30-mile radius from wherever we're based. So, but in our case, people that actually live in Atlanta, some of the drivers can actually be put in a hotel room, even though, technically they could go home, but by the contract, the production has to provide them with a hotel room if they want one. So even though they live in the metro area, because we've come outside the zone. So it's kind of weird, like Kyle says, it gets into a weird cost for the production company. But we do try to stay as much as we can within the 30-mile radius, not just for the financial side of it, but from a production point of view, because moving a company, if you move your company, you start at one location in the morning and you have to go somewhere else to finish the day. If you're moving, you're not shooting. So that's a cost to the production. So they try to put everything as close together as they can so that they don't have to move the company around, because it's a big deal. It's a 2-hour process easily to move an entire production company just a few miles, because you got to move everything, base camp, which is where all the hair and makeup trailers, cast trailers, all that stuff, your working trucks, crew parking, catering, all of that. So everything has to move, and it's not an easy process. And so the zone is staying within that zone and staying within just blocks of where you start your day is pretty imperative to us, to be able to be functioning in an efficient way. But, that's what the zone really is. It's just this is 30 miles from where we are. How long does it take? I mean, even where we are, for us to go from Sonoy to Hogansville, that's a 40-minute ride, even though it's within the zone. And so it's, you can't get there from here, sort of thing. It's not a straight shot, but that's the purpose of it, is just to try to make the company more efficient in its work day.
Do you, maybe I can ask Melanie and Lindsay this, I'm just thinking of some things as we go along here. But you know, one of the things we tell the camera ready liaisons, especially ones, I'm getting a lot of interference. Can y'all hear me? Okay. One of the things we always talk about with locations is, especially the further you are from the Atlanta and Savannah, the two production centers here, is really trying to find locations that are unique, that aren't a stone's throw away in some place like Atlanta or Savannah. And what I've found is that we're getting a lot of producers telling us that they are willing to look outside the traditional zones, because a lot of the places, there are several locations in Atlanta that I know that have been shot over and over and over again, and now they're looking for something new. Or it's something that we just don't have here, and we tend to ask them when we're engaging camera ready if they're willing to do a statewide search, and most everyone I'm dealing with these days is willing to do that, to find that unique place, even if it's just for a few days of shooting. Is that something like Melanie and Lindsay, are you asked now to kind of spread out to different parts of the state that you normally didn't go to before?
Oh yeah, they typically start off with, you can go anywhere you want. Show us the best, show us, you know, what's out there. Do some research. They want to do a lot of world building as far as where it's at. So it's a lot of strategic work. You know, depends on the project again, as far as what they're doing, if it's a feature, if it's television. You know, they have their parameters, whether it's like Mike said, you know, everything's kind of zoned around the studio, but with some of the bigger projects, they're what they call scorch the earth. They want to see everything, show us all the options, and then it, you know, comes down to scheduling. Scheduling always kills a good location, but they do want to see it. And yes, we are definitely venturing way outside the zones these days. I'd say 8 out of 10 of them, you know, we show them, you know, these really unusual, great locations that they haven't seen before. And if they can't travel to it, then they may try to somehow build it or special effects it, or see if we can get anything close to it that's closer to the stage, unfortunately. Because like Mike said, you know, time is money, and you have all these factors of traveling everybody around. But sure, to answer the question on my behalf, yes, we're traveling out further more and more. But also just referencing, you know, camera ready websites for, you know, referencing of pictures of unusual locations that are there, so the scouts don't have to travel out, or they don't have to pay us to, you know, go out that far and put us up or something like that. So those websites and those referencings to unusual or film friendly locations in your counties are very valuable up front, along with all the information that comes off the Real Scout and the Georgia Film Commission. I hope that made sense.
It did make sense. Thank you.
I agree completely. And really, it depends on the project. Your Marvels and your DCs, you can go a little farther than you can TV or a smaller budget film. But we recently went to Augusta for Suicide Squad. It's a 3-hour drive both ways. But the director loved it. He had to have that location. So that's what they chose. I mean, sometimes it just comes down to what the director ultimately wants. If they're willing to go that far, they make it work.
If just as an example, if there's a location that's outside the zone, but it's something that's just so unusual that the director wants, like Lindsay said, then they'll start asking us to start building packages around it to really make it worth their while to do the travel distance, to put up the crew. So if we're looking for something, say, industrial, and they need, you know, a house or a street scene or a river scene, then we try and put together packaging with that, and that's where all these great camera ready folks, you know, can say, hey, I know about that. I, you know, just got off of, well, not just got off of, but worked a project last year at the end of the year where I was up in Floyd County. Thanks, Ann. I mean, was a great help with just firing off ideas. What else do you need? What else do you need? What else do you need? So sometimes if we're out of the zone, if we can put a package together to make it more appealing for production, that helps too.
That's also the time where we would reach out again to the camera ready person and start, you know, really digging in and figuring out like what else we can add in, you know, to complement this, you know, kind of unusual or super specific or unique location. So like, you know, if there's like another couple days we can build in outside of the zone, like they were all saying, like we'll use you guys as a resource at that point to help us fill in, because, you know, most of the time we're not always as familiar with those areas as we are with, you know, where we end up spending most of our time, which is, you know, the metro Atlanta area, or Savannah for the folks based in Savannah.
So that gets me into a question about photography, and I'm not going to try to have a photography class here. I think we could do a whole session here on how you shoot location photographs, but if it's possible, maybe Melanie and Lindsay can answer this too. Do you just have some broad suggestions to the camera ready folks who are trying to shoot photos and upload into our system, how you want these photos shot? Just some broad kind of quick pointers, and because we know sometimes we get locations that we know that when you see them, you're not going to be able to use them. There's not enough coverage, for example, maybe shots are out of focus. There are certain things that we know aren't going to appeal to your bosses, and even though we can tell the location might be interesting. So is there a way to kind of sum this up, and then maybe one day we'll have a longer session on this?
I think you nailed it. Beauty shots are a good thing. Coverage is huge. The more coverage we can get, the better. We want to be able to see what it looks like as an establishing picture of a location. So if you can shoot wide is better.
Shoot the reverse.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know, just to show something as an example, I don't know, a schoolhouse or something. I mean, if the camera ready folks can do like what Lindsay said, and do a wide shot and establish kind of the building, and then maybe kind of go at different angles, and like Mike said, turn around, do a reverse, show us, you know, kind of what's in the environment and everything as far as interiors, you know, some of the highlights, you know, the bigger areas, something like that. You know, the closets, the toilets aren't quite, you know, pertinent or important at that point. It's really just kind of seeing if we will bite the hook and see if it kind of has the big parameters of what we're looking for.
And you don't have to overshoot it either. That's,
yeah.
A lot of people will just send you tons of photographs that that, you know, you want to show enough, but you don't need to show every nook and cranny like Melanie was saying. It's and don't discount something because the reverse or the area it's in may not look all that aesthetically pleasing. We can work around that a lot. You know, I think just a good general, as has been mentioned, nice shot of a good shot of what it looks like. I would stay away from shooting pans on a phone camera though, because they distort. Now, by a pan, I mean a series of photographs. In the old school, when you shoot film, you would take 3 frames and then you meld them together to make like a 180-degree view of what you're looking at. You can do that in a phone now. You get a panorama setting on your phone, and you can just shoot a pan by moving the camera, and then moving the phone, and it pieces it together. Or you might have a panorama set up on the phone automatically, just a wide shot. The problem with that though is a lot of times it'll distort what the pan will distort a little bit, and it looks curved, and production designers hate that, and directors do too. So it can be just a single frame as long as you capture the essence of the place. You don't have to shoot pans, but it's also, you know, the quality, it needs to be well lit, and, you know, and not have to figure out what it looks like. It just needs to be a good shot of it. Think of like you're shooting photos for a travel brochure or something like that. Just show the nice views, and then the scouts and the location managers and stuff will send somebody. They'll go out and take a look at it, and they can get a little more detailed with it. But you just, like Melanie said, you want to hook them with what you got and let them come take a look at it.
What helps me?
Go ahead, Melanie.
What helps me the most from you guys, and I'm sure everybody else, is a nice establishing shot, and definitely an address, because with our new digital age, we can get on Google Earth and don't even possibly need a reverse shot. So it's really about showing off what the architecture looks like, or what the landscape looks like that you're showing us. Give us an address, and then we can do a little more investigation into it, you know, put somebody on the street, and then you can do a 360 or see what's around there. But yeah, don't forget that address.
I use Google a lot as a scout.
Yeah.
I'll use it. I'll just, because you can get street views, do a 360, shoot, you know, screenshots of it, and I've done it that way. I've scouted with Google.
Yeah.
Earth.
Yeah.
You can see if there's a train running behind it.
Yeah.
What about drone footage?
Yeah, that's a new tool people use, but I don't find it necessary.
It can be helpful for landscapes and, you know, like big wide areas that you can't always capture in, like, you know, the scope in one shot from the ground, but they're not necessary. Again, a lot of times, like, I hate to kind of hit the nail over the head so many times, like these guys have said it, but, you know, usually we're either coming out ourselves or sending somebody else to, you know, cover it the way that the director or production designer wants it covered, so we know, you know, they're a little more familiar with what we're trying to achieve with the region. So before, usually on a feature, when you have all the world, or, you know, more time than on maybe a television show, you know, might send out a scout before we even take the designer, and then the designer will come out and take a look with the location manager, and then it passes those two kind of first initial passes, then that's when we bring the director out to kind of get a yay or a nay. So it's usually a 2 to 3 step process before we even get to the point where we're like, yeah, this is where we want to be. I know that can be a little more accelerated for television. I'm sure Mike or Lindsay or Melanie could speak to that more, but you know, it just, we'll cover it. We just need to know that it's there and have like some decent photos to get everybody excited, so we can get permission to, you know, send somebody outside the zone to go look at it.
And we always tell the camera ready folks, in addition to shooting pictures or acquiring pictures and putting them in our database, is to also make sure that everything we have is current, as far as owners and film friendliness, because I know you guys would probably agree, the last thing we want to do is get a director interested in some place that's no longer an option. And the further away the location is, the less likely we at the state level are going to know that it's no longer an option, or something's changed, or the place is burned down, or something has happened. We don't need to know when we have people in the van.
Yeah, that's
or find out.
Bad to have happen.
Yeah. Okay, so what tips, you know, sometimes I get questions from communities, you know, again, trying to market what they have in advance, and a lot of them want to hold fam trips, familiarization trips, and, you know, in normal times, it's really hard to get people lined up that are available to go, but it is is something that communities are interested in. So are those, assuming you even had the time to do that, is that something you find worthwhile? Are weekends or evenings best? Or is a virtual tour better? I mean, how would you recommend a community do that?
Any of those, but you know, it would have to be a weekend for most of us if we're working, because we just don't have the time to pull away during the week to do stuff like that. So, and the fam tours that have, at least up in this area that we've been working on, they usually schedule them on weekends. Sometimes they try to stick them in the middle of the week, but I guess they'll find out pretty quickly that that's not a good thing to do, because it's not. If we're working, we just don't have the time during the week. Sometimes we don't have it on the weekend because of the way the schedule plays out. But a virtual tour is fine too. There's nothing wrong with that. You know, again, just, you know, show us what you got. And I think it's a good idea. I mean, tourism people use those, and you know, fam tours, and you know, they bring in you know, journalists and travel photographers and stuff like that. It's a good thing to use. And I think virtually is a way to do it if you just wanted to throw something out there on a broad stroke kind of thing, or say, here's a link to our virtual tour of this college campus that's up near our town, or something like that, or whatever. Industrial area, if you can get footage of it and stick it on a website, then that's helpful.
Location folks, do you want to help me give a list of some of the most unusual things for these camera ready folks to look for that could possibly be put onto a virtual tour?
Sure.
Some of the unusual stuff that, you know, we're always being called towards, you know, other than just houses and stuff like that. I mean, I'll chime in and say, you know, unusual industrial spaces, whether they're abandoned or film friendly, hospitals that have been closed or film friendly,
Ornate, like historic buildings, like the amount of those that we have here in the metro Atlanta area are few and far between, or, you know, getting demolished or becoming unfriendly to filming.
Yeah. Medical facilities are really tough. Anything that looks like a medical facility. Schools, offices.
Prisons.
Yeah, prisons, of course. Beautiful landscaping. We've probably all been called to look for, you know, ruins, unusual geography, old bridges, dams. You know, as far as properties, we're always looking for that old farmhouse somewhere. You know, the ideal picturesque farmhouse out in the middle of nowhere. Houses are, you know, a little easier, but those are just some of the pointers. Lindsay, you got any?
Yeah, all
Throw
of
at
them
us?
great. I'm always looking for hospitals and schools. There's a bidding war on those in Atlanta right now because there's just not enough. So municipal buildings, jails, hospitals, schools, those things always come up.
Right. And all the crazy stuff that's like, show us New York and Atlanta. Show us what that looks like. So, you know, I know
any like major roadways too that could easily be closed or detoured, where we could own for multiple days. When I say own, like shut down for a length of time, even, you know, into multiple days. Those are always helpful to know. And a lot of them are GDOT regulated, so they get, so in particular, if they're not state routes and you have like a city control or county control over them and they're closable, those are great to know about, just because, you know, sometimes we end up in these car chase sequences or stunt sequences that need, like, you know, total control over the road.
Yeah, and getting back to what Melanie was saying, you know, we always tell people to look out for neighborhoods or locations in their communities that look like they're in some other part of the world or time period that they could play for Like I saw Molly was on the line a minute ago, or I know she's still here, but when I was up in Canton the other day, you know, as some of you know, they have a mill housing district that, you know, that could play for West Virginia or Pittsburgh or something like that. You know, this, because we get a lot of requests for shows that are not set in the South or set in Georgia. You know, they're set someplace else. We're having to portray another part of the world. So if you have a part of your community that you always thought looked like someplace else, that's good to know about.
Yeah, areas with a lack of trees are really hard to find. Desert locations, anything like that.
There you go, Rochelle. She's your desert. She's got your desert down there in
Awesome.
Albany.
Oh yeah, the sand dunes.
Sand dunes, right. Okay, so wanted to ask a question about permits. I know a lot of people on this call already have permits and guidelines in place, but maybe some folks do not, but are thinking about it or wanting to research it. And again, you know, just kind of broad strokes. I mean, how do you feel about those? What, in a perfect world, how would you like to see one formulated that would be most helpful to you and to the community if they're kind of just starting from square one? Any examples that are out there? Just want to throw that out to everyone, I guess. How should a community create a permit or include in it?
Excuse me, be right back.
Less is
Anybody
better.
else? What's that?
Less is better.
Less is better.
Less.
I'll echo that. I don't know that there's like a perfect model out there, but usually the less red tape we have to deal with, the better on our end.
You have to obviously protect your community. And by that, I mean, you don't want to put your city or county into a situation where they could get into some legal trouble. But at the same time, you don't want to make it so restrictive and so cumbersome that it's difficult to navigate. And because we're nimble. We have to be very nimble, and things change quickly with us. An actor can get sick, weather can turn on us. We were going to shoot here, but now we got to go over here, and that can happen overnight. It can happen in the course of a day. So we need to be in a situation where the local government can be forgiving, can be very nimble with us as well. If it's very structured and you have to go before city council to get an approval to close a street, and you can't, I'll give you an example, and not to pick on anybody in particular, but I find that working in the area that I work in, we love to shoot in Noonan, but Noonan's process is a little more cumbersome, and that everything has to go through their city council. There's no, for instance, if I have something, I go to council, get permission to shoot on certain days, and for some reason we have to flip the schedule, they won't allow me, at least their system used to be, it's been a while since I shot there, but I understand it's still pretty much the same. You can't go to another side of town if you don't have a permit to be there on that certain day without going in front of council. So that's very cumbersome. You know, it's not possible for us to work under an environment like that. City of Atlanta is the same way in a lot of cases. Their permit process is very kind of rigid. And I know a lot of the areas have used that same system that the cities got set up. But you know, flexibility is important to us, and being flexible and being able to help us navigate a day if we run into issues, or navigate our schedules. So how difficult is it for us if we give proper notice to a community? And that's important too from our perspective. For what you need to look out from a production company is how well are they going to communicate with your local officials and with your city government and your businesses in the neighborhoods you go into. We have to communicate with these people in advance that we're coming to your neighborhood. Well, I'm bringing a circus to your neighborhood, okay, or to your town, and this is what we're planning on doing. And you need to that notice has to come in advance of us showing up. We can't just show up with 300 people and a bunch of trucks all of a sudden in somebody's front yard and saying, we're shooting your neighbor's house next door here. You need to let the production company obligation is to let people know they're coming. And you want them to be honest about what they're doing. Don't hide anything. We're going to blow this building up, but we don't want to tell everybody about that right now. Well, no, that's not in my opinion, that's not a good way to do business. You need to let them know what you're doing. If you're using somebody's house and there's going to be a murder in the basement, they need to know that. You know, they don't need to know, you know, the day of, oh, you can't come back to that. Well, we didn't tell you about this because we're afraid you say no. No, you got to be upfront and tell them exactly.
Yeah. There are a lot of folks that take a lot of pride in being upfront, and I think, you know, we're 10 years into really the incentive being, you know, a real player in the industry, and there's still some people that think they can come into town and kind of play dumb with, you know, oh, I didn't know, we need to let them know. Everybody knows they need to be on their toes with communicating with the community about the impact of their show, what they're doing. You know, we might not be able to give out specifics about exactly what we're doing for, you know, just because of some of the secrecy around some of these projects, but, you know, we should be able to fundamentally tell you how this is coming into your community and what the impact will be to businesses or residents, and, you know, hopefully with enough lead time to kind of, you know, handle some of these problems ahead of time to where, you know, you guys aren't having to get involved in some of these, like the nitty gritty of some of these, you know, problems that arise from us coming in. You know, so yeah, like Mike is saying, like, I think the folks that are not acting in good faith to be communicative and, you know, involve the stakeholders that are impacted by the filming requests. Like, you know, we're not trying to in any way imply that everybody should just be able to kind of run rampant with whatever they want to do. You know, those of us that are trying to do a good job are communicating with the police and communicating with city officials to make sure that what we're doing is, you know, everybody's in agreement with it. And, you know, when we need to make these moves. But like he was saying, some of the structures in place to get these last minute approvals or changes can kind of be cumbersome if, you know, you have to go through too many folks, or, you know, sit before a city council that only meets like once every other week or whatever, you know.
Yeah.
Hey, anybody else, or we're good? All right, thank you. So I'm just looking down the list here. So I had a question about, I don't know what just happened. Okay. How can we, the Camera Ready liaisons, better coordinate production schedules with public events, public work schedules, or improve communication with neighborhoods, or work together when emergencies happen, like if there's a fire, power outage, you know, disasters like that? How can they help coordinate those kind of issues and schedules with you?
Well, again, I think it comes back to us communicating what we want to do to them, and then working. All right, there's going to be a festival on the, you know, I'm coming to you and I say I want to film there in the middle of May. Well, we got a festival for the middle of May. Well, then we obviously can't be there if the festival is there. And how, you know, we have to be able to work around them as well as they try to help us. But if it's a big event that's known in advance, then we just try to avoid it. I mean, that's my take on it. But you know, let us know in advance. Okay, we're thinking about coming into your community in July. What do you got going on in July? They should look at their calendar and say, well, we got this, this, and this is where this is going to be. We're going to be downtown, closing streets and stuff like that. Just let us know what you got going, and we can kind of schedule around it, or try to. Or if it doesn't work for us, we go somewhere else. But it's a two-way street. The communication is we tell you what we need and when we're going to be there, and then you tell us, oh, well, this might not be a good time for this. So, you know, we try to work around, we try to be flexible, work with people on their schedules and vice versa.
Yeah, I would say just keep us in the know. Just let us know everything you got going on. We'd rather have too much information.
Are you able to get on your webinar okay? Okay, all right, me too.
I don't know what that was. Okay. Lindsay, did you finish what you wanted to say?
Yeah, just communication is key for sure.
Okay. Anybody else? So let's talk about dealing with property owners. You know, one thing we've told the camera ready liaisons is to not get into like the answer we give. You know, we don't get into location rate discussions. It's a private transaction between you and them, and we don't advise. We get asked all the time how much a homeowner asks how much they should charge for you guys to shoot on their property. We tell the camera ready folks not to get into that if they can avoid it. But just broadly speaking, if you're shooting in a community and there is an issue at someone's private property and they ask the camera ready liaison to get involved, whether you ask or the homeowner asks, I mean, what is the best way that they can resolve these conflicts, and do you agree that they should stay out of the location rate discussion if possible? Melanie, I'll start with you.
No, thanks. Well, as a scout, personally, you know, I'm coming in possibly before location manager, before I even know what a budget is, or scheduling. I get asked all the time about, you know, rates and everything. You know, I give them as much information as I can, meaning I try and communicate how much of an impact it's going to be on their property. I kind of go into film 101 as far as, you know, if they're only filming on the outside or if we're taking over the entire house. I try and reassure them that a manager, you know, would sit down personally with them and negotiate time, impact, how it's going to affect the neighborhoods, but their own personal properties and their families. I'd rather make it a worst case scenario and, you know, kind of give them, you know, what's the worst thing that could happen, meaning, you know, we may want to shoot out in your front yard, but we're going to need to use your interior house for holding or cast, or, you know, we may want to shoot inside. So there's not a black and white picture that I really have for that. It kind of goes off of the basis of the project and what I know. And, you know, I'll give them as much information as I possibly can, because like everybody sees and agrees that communication is everything. And I will never candy coat anything. I will say a circus is coming to your neighborhood. So I have various ways of talking to people when they ask me about rates and stuff. It's really hard because everybody's always heard, well, you know, this project got this amount, you know, TV budget's different, movie budgets are different, independent. I have this little quirky little saying that, you know, there's basically 3 reasons why you get involved with a film shoot. 1 is compensation. 2 is advertising, if you're a business or if you just want to show off your house, or it's kind of novel. Or 3, you just really want to be a part of the project because you love the project, it's an independent, or hey, you want the Marvel, my kids love Marvel, or whatever it is. It's kind of an independent topic. So I don't think the camera ready folks should get involved with that. I think that, you know, the scouts or the assistants or whoever's out there kind of doing the face-to-face initially should give them as much information as possible. But I mean, I don't have any right to say, hey, you can make, I don't know, $1,200 a day on this piece of property. I mean, I kind of give guesstimates because I've been in the production end of it and everything, but it's kind of a dangerous slope to get into. So I gladly say I will be introducing you to one of our fine managers if our director and our designer really loves your project and we want to go ahead with it. The next step would be that we'd bring a designer out and take a look at it. If they like it, then, you know, we're going into a process where we can start talking about money. How was that for a long-winded
That was
answer?
great.
Okay.
Well, how should they answer if the homeowner says, hey, so-and-so broke my antique vase and you need to help me resolve this?
Well,
if there's an issue like that.
I always,
So there's a, oh, sorry.
uh,
Sorry, we go Melanie.
it's okay. I mean, I always tell my homeowners to vet a project, including the scouts that are approaching them if they don't know them. Look up the project name, look up the studio name. I come with a badge, I come with a letter from the studio trying to describe the project, the time frame. I would advise the property owners, the camera ready folks that are being approached to do a little research into it. Do we know these folks? Call the film commission. You know, I think I forgot what your question was now.
Oh, I was asking more about if there was, you know, in the rare case that there's some damage done on someone's property and
Always
the property
make sure
owner.
they have insurance. I always tell any property owner, make sure that the project has a certificate of insurance. I mean, or a really great explanation, why not?
I think you should proceed cautiously if you find yourself in that position, because there's usually in our location agreement, there's a restoration clause saying we will take care of that kind of damage. So sometimes, you know, there's two ways this can go. One, the production is acting in bad faith and not following up on their thing. And at that point, or following up on their obligations, at that point, it kind of becomes a legal issue. And it might be appropriate for you guys to get involved, especially depending on who the owner in question is. But sometimes there are, you know, location and property owners that are operating in bad faith as well, and, you know, trying to leverage that to extort more money out of the production, or, you know, just it's a tricky situation that I would, you know, proceed with caution if you ever get roped into it. I don't think I've ever found myself in a position where, like, you know, the camera ready folks were having to get involved. There was one instance on Bad Boys where a state representative contacted the mayor's office in Atlanta based on a road closure we had, and they kind of had to, you know, approach us. I think even Lee had to get involved on that one, and you know, it was a little tricky because of the politics involved, but, you know, we were able to kind of work it out directly with that politician, and, you know, I did my best to keep Lee and Cardelia out of that as much as possible, just because, like, you know, they have their own, you know, relationships they need to maintain. It's not our job to be the go-between on us on that.
It really is. It's a business situation between the production company and the individuals we cut contracts with, and that's, you know, that's private business. So that's really between the production company and the people you're doing business with. There are times when both sides have a grievance. It's like Kyle said, this is a double-edged sword. A lot of times the companies are being gouged and they know they're being gouged, but we go back to the community, we go back to the community coordinator for us. If it's the camera ready person, say, look, these people are holding us up. It'd be nice if you'd say something to them. Puts them in a bad spot. But, you know, it is a two-way street. We've been given permission by a community, by the city council or the city or whoever it may be, county, to be there, and we would like to be treated fairly, and we're going to try to treat people fairly. But we run into situations where we know we're being gouged. That people saying, well, you know, we're going to pay for instance, if we're going to close down a town square for 2 days, the people that have businesses there are going to be impacted by that, by us being there in a negative way. So we want to, at least the way I've always worked, is I want to make sure that those folks are compensated fairly for the inconvenience of what we do. A lot of production companies don't even look at it that way. They'll say, well, the city gave us a permit, we're going to be here. The heck with those folks. You know, that's their problem. Not everybody has that attitude, but some, I know very large productions that do that, that will say, well, we got a city permit, we're going to close the street and we're not paying you anything. And that's not quite the right way to do things either. But on the flip side of that, if you're trying to be fair with somebody and you want to, and then they come back and say, well, you know, this is going to cost me $4,000 for the day. And you know for a fact, just by looking at the play, this person don't make that much in a month, you know, so why are they trying to hit us up for $4,000? So it kind of goes both ways, but you really should try to stay on the fringes of that and as best you can, and not really delve into the financial side of it. It's really up to us to try to figure our way out of it. But we may come to you at some point and say, we know that, you know, this guy's being a little unreasonable. This person's being a little unreasonable with us. Would you mind at least having a conversation with them and say, look, we're trying to do this for the good of the community. We'd like for you to be a team player. You know, a way to approach it that way. And you may have some influence, you may not, but it puts a bad taste in the mouth of the production company if they go into a community and they get held up. They're more than likely not going to want to return there. And they'll tell other people that too. So you might not want to go to that place because you don't get a lot, you know, these folks are a little hard to deal with. And, but, you know, and the flip side is that production companies should in some way do something positive for their presence there. It shouldn't be, well, we've got a permit, we're just going to do this anyway. So you got to find that happy ground in there.
All right. So one of the questions I get all the time, as a matter of fact, I got it yesterday, is a lot of our camera ready liaisons would like to know how they can find out what the local economic impact of a production was when they were in their community. Like if someone's shooting in Rome or Barnesville or wherever it might be, you know, how can they find out what you spent in hotels and what you spent in lumber or whatever it might be in the community, because that's an important message to get out there to to the folks in the community that, you know, hey, you know, you may have to be patient with this road closure, but this movie that's in town, you know, or we've had productions here in the past that have spent X amount of dollars, and it's a great economic benefit to our community, but they don't know how to get those numbers. I mean, on the state level, we have the general state spend, but we don't know where like those specific hotel nights were necessarily, you know, what town those were in. So this isn't necessarily a locations question, but how would you recommend they get that information, or can they get that information from someone with the production?
There is kind of two ways you could go about it. You know, some productions are more open to kind of providing this information than others. You know, you can go through the location manager to get to the production coordinator or the supervisor that might just have that information readily available. If they don't, or they're too busy to kind of cull all that for you, you know, sometimes you can just ask for their vendor list, and you can kind of contact the local vendors directly to see if they could kind of give you a snapshot of the economic spend from that particular production, which, you know, is a lot of legwork, but somebody's doing it, whether it's you guys or someone on the production or their, you know, accountant is pulling that. So, you know, you might actually get more realistic numbers directly from the vendors themselves if, you know, you're comfortable making those connections. And, you know, we will have, I don't see any reason why you couldn't just easily get a vendor list from the production if they're willing to give it to you.
Anybody else have thoughts on that?
Well, it's like Kyle said, though, it's a lot of the accounting departments aren't that willing to give out exact numbers. You could also go through your own chamber and your own business association on a local level if you want to find out something quickly. They've been buying lumber for you. Can you give us some idea how much they bought? Well, they might be willing to give you that information. Then again, they may not. You know, it depends on the individuals, but certainly with hotel rooms and things like that, I would think that would be something you could find without having to go through a production company to find it out. Like when we were down in Savannah, down on Jekyll last season, we had 250 hotel rooms for 5 days down there. And so they knew, the Jekyll Island Authority knew what kind of money we were spending just on hotel rooms down there for that 4 or 5 day period. So that's not something we had to tell them.
There also might be some, you know, intangibles, or I say intangibles, just stuff you can't track. Like, you know, you have 250 crew down there. They're eating somewhere. They're going out to eat after, you know, after the shoot day, or they're going out drinking, or, you know, if there's nightlife, some of them like to go out and party. So, you know, there's, yeah.
But yeah, it's that kind of thing you don't really feel until you can't figure it out till we're gone. So, but there's some obvious visible things that you can see that we're having an impact on a financial side.
Yeah, somebody just sent me a message that said that for their purposes, that even if they could just get the budget range of what you think you spent in the community at that time, and not necessarily, you know, detailed vendor lists or tax returns or whatever it is, you know, just a number, right, that may even be enough for them.
Everything is so departmentalized in our industry. So like we would have an idea from our own budgets, how much we spend on like location fees and permits and police and that kind of stuff. But, you know, as far as like the construction department, what they spent building this set, or, you know, if they had a bunch of gravel delivered from a local vendor, like we wouldn't have access to that. So that's what I was saying. Like, you know, if the accounting or production, the production office isn't willing to provide that information, maybe just going as crude as just asking for a list of the local vendors they use. They might just be willing to give you that, and you can reach out to them directly. I just, you know, it's just, there's a lot of, it takes a lot of time to pull those figures sometimes, because it's, you know, different departments. So they might be less willing to do that than you would think, just because it's additional work on an already kind of like paperwork heavy industry. So you might be able to get some of that information yourself if, you know, you're getting resistance from, you know, just getting direct numbers.
Yeah, there's I got a message here that said that the Georgia Department of Tourism has an economic impact calculator of events, not really designed for film, but can help you give you an idea as far as food and lodging. I can't say I've ever played around with that, but that may be something helpful to look into. I only have a couple more questions left, so if anybody has something they want to ask, then we sure need to get to it, take advantage of this opportunity. But how can communities make you aware of local vendors, especially, you know, we've talked about these times when you've been, especially outside the zone, you know, invested in a community and staying there. In many cases, it'd be beneficial for you to work with a local vendor than to bring whatever it is down from Atlanta or from Savannah or wherever it might be. But how can our folks make you aware of what companies they do have? I mean, would you recommend they tell people to list in our Real Crew directory on our website, or how can they make sure you know that about restaurants, about lumber suppliers, or is it just a matter of when you need it, you'll Google like everybody else and see who's around?
It would be nice if they had a list put together ahead of time with all those vendors, hotels, restaurants, things like that. And then when it looks like we are going to go to one of the locations in that county, they could go ahead and send us, hey, by the way, here's what we got to offer in addition to this location.
Yeah, you can get, I'm sure the chamber has a list of, or there's a business association within the county or the city or town that they've got a list of the industries that are there. So, you know, getting that in advance would be helpful, you know. I always look for, I prefer to do business with local people. That's where, oddly enough, the more you do there locally, the easier it is to work, because people see that impact. They realize that this is a good thing to have here. Not everybody benefits the same, you know. Somebody that supplies building materials is going to have a better, if we're building sets and things of that nature in the community, then they're going to obviously do better than, you know, the local hardware store or a restaurant down the street. But the fact, when I was at the film office, there was, and this is a long time ago, and this was early in when the film industry was developing here in Georgia, a producer gave his crew the per diem in $5 bills. So they all had $5 bills in their pocket. And while they were in the community and living there and going to the restaurants and stuff, everybody started seeing these $5 bills showing up in their cash register. So it turned out to be a good way for him to let people know, we're spending some money in your community. We may not be coming to you directly, but this guy just went to the liquor store and bought $200 worth of liquor with $5 bills. I mean, you know, so that kind of stuff, they started to feel the impact because they were there for, you know, a pretty long period of time. So people realize, okay, we're all benefiting from this in a way. That's a different way of doing things, but not everybody, you know, they weren't buying big purchases like that, but they had a crew of 150 people in this community for 2 weeks. And people all realized that they were benefiting from it being there. So that's sort of a way to gauge it, I guess, in a way. But it's important that you spend as much as you can locally. There's certain things you can't. I mean, you know, you've got vendors that you're locked into because of contracts and things of that nature that you have to buy things from, but or bring in materials and whatnot. But try to spend as much as you can in the local community when you're there, and that'll go a long way to kind of ease some of the stress. And there's going to be people, I don't care where you go, I don't care what business you're in, you're going to run into somebody that doesn't like you being there. They think you're, you know, this is, why are they here? Why are they doing this? There's always some naysayer that's going to be there that's going to cause you problems. That's another thing. I want to go back to this real quickly. When you go into a community, it's real important to know who the troublemakers are. It's real important to know who's going to give you a hard time. And you're going to know that more than we are. I'd rather hear it from you than me discover it by accident. And that's one of the reasons I always like to letter a neighborhood or letter a town when I'm coming in. I like to do it early because I'm going to find out right away who it is that's going to give me a problem. That squeaky wheel is going to raise, they're going to call me or they're going to shoot me an email and say, I don't like you being on my street. You're going to cause me this and that. So I know that person's going to be a problem. So, or, you know, I've got this business to run and I don't want you interfering with it. Well, I know where that's coming from. So I'm going to have to kind of figure out how to manipulate around that. So it's important for us to know who the problem, every community's got them. I don't care where you go. There's going to be somebody in that community that's a pain in the butt to everybody. And we need to know who that is and and what your take is on how to deal with them. And then we try to work around them if we have to with them at all. So.
They're going to be your repeat customers too. You're going to have a problem with them every time somebody comes in, whether they're doing a good job or not.
Right. Exactly. So, but yeah, I think, again, I think the more money you can spend in a community, the better it is. It's better for everybody, and they'll eventually see it. Crickets.
Well
Somebody-
said, Mr. Riley. Well said.
Somebody told me they could hear my cat outside the door, so I was trying to mute
Oh,
the
you
cat.
walked away from you weren't doing your job. It's like you walked
I
away.
took a nap. I hope you don't mind.
No, no.
I'm just an avatar. I'm really in bed right now. So one thing we get asked a lot too, and I don't want to put y'all on the spot, but I'm just interested in your thoughts. Maybe this is a good Mike Riley question because of the show he works on, but behind the scenes footage, photographs, things like that our communities may want to use for promotional purposes. Can they get it? How can they get it? What are the standards?
All that goes through our publicist. I have no magic ability here. I can go to if somebody requests some photos, I go to anything that deals with the production. If a news reporter wants to do a story and they come to me first, I say, call the publicist. She clears it, I'll talk to you. All that is handled through our publicist, and and behind the scenes stuff is tricky because they don't want anything in the press before that particular episode will air or before it's in the public domain. So they'll have people, people that bring their kids come out to the set. They get some pictures made with some of the cast. They don't get those until the season ends because we don't want anything out in the public prior to it being aired on the network. And we get a lot of that. I mean, a ton of it, and not as much as we used to, but we still get a lot of it. And all that it's a little tricky. They want to meet a cast member. Well, that's not always easy. It's because they're working. The thing you got to stress with people is, I know this looks cool to you, but these people are at work. So if you're at work and somebody came over to your desk and said, can I get a picture with you real quick, and you're right in the middle of something, you would probably say, no, I can't let you do that. But, and that's a little bit of a dance, but I don't have to worry about that. That's what the publicist does. So that's my go-to. That's the person I throw under the bus all the time, is the publicist. I say, let's get in touch with the publicist. So I say, I'll see what I can do, but I can't make any promises. So that's I think that works pretty much.
I think another thing to add to that too, Mike, is that the more lead time we have to work with a publicist, the better. So like, if it's happening the day, if we're getting the request the day before, probably not going to happen because there's a lot of personalities involved in the request. Sometimes the cast are up for it, sometimes they're not. If they're not, sometimes they can be coerced a little bit, but it takes time. Like, and they're people, so like it's not like we can just like snap our fingers and they do anything that we want. On the contrary, they're usually in the driver's seat on a lot of this.
And then the other thing that gets a little tricky is public officials that want to get their pictures made with cast and crew and stuff like that. It's kind of they kind of feel like hey, I'm going to bring my wife and kids out to set. I'm the mayor of the town. I'd like to have my kids on set. Well, I'd love to help you with that. But I might not be able, to tell somebody like that that's helped you get to where you are, to allow you to work in the community. And then you have to say, well, I can't really I don't think they're going to let you do that. That doesn't go over real well with a lot of people. But it's a reality that we have to struggle with sometimes, is that, my computer's about to die. It's a reality that we have to deal with, that we can't always accommodate. We try, but we cannot always accommodate. And I've got to go get the charger to my phone, my computer.
All right, we'll let you go.
Yeah, I'll be right back.
Sometimes we hear stories about when a production is in a community, that's something that they've built, a set or an improvement they've made to a park is left behind for the benefit of the community. Is that something that you all have been involved with in the past? Is that something a community can ask for? Or are there other local opportunities, like with hiring, that these communities can ask your production for in exchange perhaps for discounted permit fees or location fees for public buildings? You know, just that's kind of a large question, but anyone have any thoughts on any of that?
It can definitely muddy the deal. Like, it's obviously always cleaner if there can just be like a location fee, and then like if there are improvements or kind of like additional, like, you know, added perks that are just kind of like intrinsic to the deal, then great. Sometimes we've been asked to leave sets behind, and some studios are willing or unwilling depending on, you know, how proprietary the set is or the set piece. Sometimes in the deal, you know, like, you know, it's like if we're going into a municipal building or something, and, you know, there's a paint job in it that's, you know, expensive, and we can kind of, you know, either restore the paint to a different color or, you know, give it a fresh paint job. Like, you know, that's part of the deal and can kind of be negotiated up front. But, you know, like it does get to a breaking point sometimes where it just muddies it too much to like kind of be in anybody's, in the production's best interest to follow through. And if we're talking about like leaving sets behind or something structural, they're going to want you to sign off on, there's like a legal document that goes with it, basically, where you're taking on all liability for it. They don't want to ever, like, you know, if it collapses 2 years after we're gone, like, they don't want to, you know, get sued because of shoddy workmanship on the set or whatever else. So
Yeah,
it's possible, but like it's not always a reality. And like that's even been the case. I know at Black Hall Studios here in the metro Atlanta area, Jungle Cruise built this water tank, and that's a Disney show. And like I think Black Hall wanted to keep it, but the legal process for releasing that tank to them got so complicated, they just ended up filling it back in and, you know, crushing up the concrete and filling it in with, backfilling it with dirt. Like it just gets to a point sometimes with these requests where it's, you know, not gonna happen. But it's certainly always in the realm of possibility. I don't know, what you've had experience with this, I'm sure.
yeah, it doesn't hurt to ask, but it's a liability issue that most studios do not want. Even if you sign off, say, we'll take full responsibility for it. Somebody gets hurt, they're going to, the lawyers that they hire are going to follow the money, and it's going to go back to the studio because they're the ones that got the deep pockets, and or perceived to, and it's, in reality they do. When I worked on Odd Life Timothy Green, we shot down in Rex, and we did a little put a sign. We shot the old mill down there, and we put a sign on the side of the. We painted a sign on the side of the barn that had absolutely nothing to do with the studio or with the project. I mean, it didn't matter. It was just background art. Disney wouldn't allow them to keep it. They went back and made them paint over it. They wouldn't let them keep anything, and they wanted another place. One of the farmhouse we used, they wanted us to leave something there, and Disney said, "No, not leaving anything." So it depends on the company, but it is a liability that none of them really want. So they'll just if it's a structural thing, like Kyle said, more than likely they're going to take it away and just tear it down, whatever it is. Because they're not meant to be permanent anyway. Sets are not permanent. That's another thing that people have to understand. These things are not going to last forever because they're not designed to last forever. They're going to deteriorate on you pretty quickly, and they're not meant to be permanent. So doubtful that they'll leave anything of any great. Sometimes they do it though. I think down in Barnesville, they painted some murals on the side of the buildings down there, and they left them for them. But a show that went in there, but that was something that wasn't proprietary at the time. So a painting is one thing, but a structure is something totally different. So
what about with hiring locals as interns? Has anybody ever done something like that, or in the locations department? Is that even a possibility that someone could put out there for you? I mean, how would that work?
I think our intern thing's a little tricky, because at least with AMC, folks I work for, they have an intern program that they run every year. Now I can hire somebody as a local to work as a production assistant for me or something like that, put them on payroll. But we do have an intern program that we run through the state program with the, film training people and all that. And we usually hire interns on the show every year. But to go into, it's a little complicated. It's another legal issue that you get into. This industry has turned so different since I started in it. It is all about liability, and nobody wants to be liable. And when you set up an intern program, it has to be set up in a very specific way as far as AMC is concerned. So, but I do try to. I have a person on my staff right now that I hired as a PA. We shot at her parents' house back in season 2 or 3. And I put her on payroll as somebody to stay at the house. Her parents moved out, and I wanted her to stay on pay. I just needed somebody there to monitor the house. So I just hired her as a production assistant. She was in nursing school. And then after we got finished shooting there, at the end of that season, she came to me the next year and said, I really like that. Can I come to work for you full time? And so I hired her on, and she's been working for me ever since. So, so that's, I do try to hire local people. I think it's important, especially young people that want to get into business or that, had no idea that they might be interested in working in the film industry. And I've hired a lot of young folks to come on my show that to work as production assistants that have gone on to work in the business full time. So I definitely do that, and I think most production companies would do that. Internship's a little trickier, but hiring them outright, as a production assistant or a day player, somebody that can help us, at a certain location where we need an extra body on the day to help park the crew or whatever it is, pick up trash, whatever it is that needs to be done. That's an easy job that, somebody can get on, and they don't have to be young. I've hired some people older than me to work on and that's kind of hard to find these days. But, I've got people that have, senior to me that I've hired to work as a day player to help us out with things. So I try to do that every chance I get.
Okay, well, I am going to unmute Lee Cuthbert from our office because she wanted to ask something or make sure I covered something. So hold on one second. Are you unmuted, Lee? Hold on one second. I'm trying to figure this out.
She can do it.
It's not letting. All right, here we go.
Thanks, Craig. I just had a quick question for Kyle and Mike. You guys had 2 different zones. Mike, your zone was 30 miles from your stage and your production office. And Kyle, you were talking about a zone that was city center. So
Yeah.
I've been confused about some shows say that the zone starts from their production office and some folks are still using the city center.
It's super confusing, and I can shed a little light to it. The area standard agreement for the Teamsters, which is the drivers and the location managers, has their production center as the state capitol. The IATSE union, which is, the technicians, like the lighting guys, camera, hair, makeup, wardrobe, they all have it listed as the production office. So sometimes, and it's rare, there might be 2 zones, and they're usually pretty close to each other. Specifically on Goosebumps, we were based out of a production office in Conyers, but because of the way that, the line producer had negotiated the zone with the local unions, we were able to extend our zone into Atlanta, as well as all the way out to Madison, which, that's about a 60-mile range, just because of the specific. So there is some leeway. And like with Mike's, I don't know how The Walking Dead ended up doing that, but I'm assuming it was like a conversation with IATSE.
They've got a side letter designating Sonoy as the center of our zone.
but as far as the reason I always say the state capital is because it's written into the area standard contract that way, and that's the only like consistent one. So like that's the best, like I guess, rule of thumb. Like there's always exceptions, but that's, you know, that's like I have to explain this to production supervisors and some production managers that have never worked here before too. So don't feel bad if it's confusing, because you know it's something I learned something new about almost every show.
No, that helps. Thank you.
Yeah.
That's it.
Is that it?
Yep.
Marianne, do you want to unmute yourself? I guess you guys can do it. I don't have to do it. You have a question?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, good. Is one union more willing to float it than the other? Who's easier to work with?
Yeah. I think, you know, it just depends on, they're usually working with the business agent. So, you know, depending on how good of a relationship the line producer or production manager has with Mike or Tony. I'm not usually privy to those conversations. So that'd be a better question maybe for some line producers out there.
I think
that you guys are familiar with.
both fairly flexible. It depends on the project. And again, you know, is it? The unions don't want to let themselves be abused by it, so they're going to be a little cautious about, you know, until they get a good working relationship with the company. But I don't think they're going to put their foot down in every case. I mean, I think it makes sense to be flexible. Now that doesn't. I think it makes sense to anybody else. I think for the most part, I haven't heard a lot of issues with that.
I'll say too, like there's a lot of this day, because we work so many long hours and sometimes they're at night. The productions are usually like accounting for the fact that there's going to be some courtesy hotel rooms for distant locations, or you know, locations even on the edge of the zone, or if we're moving from one side of the production center to the other and there's like a 2-hour travel window, they're going to probably end up providing, you know, some sort of housing to the drivers, particularly because, you know, they have shorter turnarounds.
It comes back to liability. They offer. Now you can accept or you can decline. They will offer a courtesy room. They'll go ahead and book them. They'll put out a memo. Okay, there's hotel rooms at this place. If you want, you know, just check in. The company will pick it up. If they don't have room and you go to another hotel, give us the receipt. We'll take care of it. They have to do that, because if they didn't make that offer and somebody had an accident on the way back from working a 14-hour day and was driving an hour back to their house and ran off the road and got hurt or killed themselves or killed somebody else, if they had not made that offer, they'll be liable for that, you know, and they can still get sued for it, but they have to CYA themselves on that, because if they didn't make that offer, it just opens them up to all kinds of liability. And that's for any crew member. It's not just the drivers. It can be a PA. It can be anybody. They'll offer rooms to the entire crew. If we're outside the zone and we know, because if we go 30 miles south of Sonoy, the crew's still coming from Atlanta, that's an hour-and-a-half drive from downtown to 30 miles south of where production offices are. So, and a lot of crew, you know, the majority of our crew still lives in Atlanta and comes down to the studio every day. And that's, you know, they're not being given a housing option for that, but they are given the courtesy room if they're going to be having to travel a while. So they always do that.
All right. Well, we're kind of toward the end here, but I want to give one more opportunity for the Camera Ready liaisons that are still on the call to ask a question. I haven't seen any recent ones in the chat, but if someone has one they want to ask, they can unmute themselves and just go ahead and ask it. Going once, going twice. Anyone? Okay. Anybody from the location side want to say anything else to the camera ready folks? Any suggestions or
Well,
anything you want to say to them?
one of the things I wanted to address was the current COVID situation we're in. I know that we were in pre-production. They hired me on technically went to work on the 9th of April, and then on the 13th they told us that okay, we're going to shut down for a while. Still getting paid, but that may change in the near future. But this is really going to have a weird effect on how it operates when we come back. When we kind of get over this situation. I don't know how it's going to affect us. I mean, it's not going to be like flipping a switch and we're all coming back to work. This is going to be a very gradual return to coming back to work. And the one thing that I did see in one of the websites that I'm associated with the Atlanta location crew, there was a young man working on an HBO project. He said he was word that they were coming back to Saturday night live. Well, that's still going to be that's the goal of shooting for. Whether that's going to happen depends on how this thing plays out. We're not going to be jumping right back into production like full bore. I don't think once they flip the switch on this, I think it's going to be a gradual return to the business. So it's going to affect the industry and affect all of us. It's kind of weird. So we'll just have to wait to see what it's out. Very unique.
Yeah, I think.
So I'm doing as much as I can working from home, which is, as a location person, is kind of difficult. You know, I can only do so much. The writers are having plenty of time on our show to get all the script done for once. You know, back they started season script, but it's going to be for me. It's hard to do any work. Other than communicate with people via email. Going to a certain community, put out all that on the whole season. I said, look, you know what's going on. We're not going to. I'm just going to stay in touch with you, but I can't. You know, there's not much we can do. City council talk meetings, all of that kind of stuff. So.
Yeah, Mike, I think we're having some problems with your audio.
Somebody's got their mic on. There's some overflow there.
There it is. Something just happened.
Yeah, somebody was okay. What I was saying quickly, I don't know what you got, but we're just not going to be returning to work as normal, I don't think, in a very instant way. I think it's going to be a gradual return. But, you know, once we get over the hump of this pandemic, I think, you know, I think we'll be back in business in a big way. As Lee said it the other day at the GPP meeting, I don't think it's going to hurt us as far as the projects that are here. I just think it's going to be a slow, a sort of a gradual come back to work thing. But I may be totally wrong, and hope I am, but we'll see.
Yeah, we all hope to get back up and running as soon as possible. But it's been great to be able to have this meeting. I'm sorry it's gone on so long. I appreciate everyone hanging out. But who knows when we'll ever get this opportunity again. So I think it was good. Does anybody else on the location side have anything that I did not cover that you want the camera ready folks to know, that how they can be helpful to you?
Well, I would like to just say, I know a lot of what we ask of you guys is above and beyond your normal job responsibilities. I always try to be really respectful and understanding of that, and just wanted to take this opportunity to thank you guys for everything you do to support us and the industry at large. I know there's some intrinsic opportunity and benefit to your communities, but it's incredibly helpful to have a kind of point of contact when we, especially going to a new place. So thank you for making yourselves available and being open and open to hearing from us directly. And if you guys ever need to reach out for specific questions, you know, we're always available. You can reach out to Craig and connect that way, or, you know, just call us directly. I'm always available.
Indeed, I think this is a great asset to the state to have a group of people like yourselves to be able to reach out to and get in touch with. One other thing I'd like to say real quickly, and this is just my personal opinion, no is the easiest word in the English language to use. And it would be really always helpful to keep in mind that don't say no, say, let's see if we can figure out a way to make this work. And because once you say no, it becomes a little more of a dish. I think this is across the board for everybody. I think on a government level, on a industry level, you just don't say no. You say, okay, let's look at this and see if there's a way that we can make this work. And it may be no, but if you start out with, let's see if we can figure out a way to make this work, I think that would be something to keep in mind when a production company comes to you and say, we need to shut the whole town down for a month. And you go, man, I don't think we can do that. I think you should say, let's look into it. Let's see what we can do. And that's sort of an extreme example, but you know, I just don't, when somebody says no to me right off the bat, that puts a bad taste in my mouth. And I just kind of go, you know, this is not a good sign that we're going to get a lot of cooperation out of these folks. So even if you know the answer is no, just say, let's see if we can figure out a way to make it work. So I think that's an important approach to take in this industry, or with anybody, quite frankly. So anyway.
Thanks, Mike. Melanie, did you want to say something? You look like you're about to say something.
Oh, I was just leaning in, but I'd like to echo Kyle and just say thank you to all the camera ready folks and all the time and support, because I know we're all calling you, you know, asking for the moon and for you to align stars, and, you know, yesterday and the week before. So thank you, everyone, you know, with all of your references and resources and time and hospitality. And hopefully I'll be back and see you guys in person soon.
Okay. Well, thanks everybody. I think we're done.
All
Thanks
right.
for hanging in there. And I think it went well, and stay healthy. Now we can all bring our cats out that have been banging on the door.
Ellen turned into a cat.
What's that?
Ellen has just turned into one.
I know, that's cracking me up.
Yeah, Ann was chatting with me about that. I didn't get a chance to see it. That's funny.
There she is.
Ellen?
Oh, I see. Yeah. Okay. Well, thanks everybody. Stay healthy and safe, and hope to see you on the other side very soon.
Thank you, everyone.
Y'all take care.
Craig.
Okay.
Thanks, y'all.
Bye.
Social distancing.
That's right.